perhaps to what we realize, this matter of refugees is not a new thing. I mean, it is a biblical topic. It is a biblical matter. If you read through the Bible, you will find that there are many references to people and stories about people who have been in situations where they have to leave their land and find themselves homeless. The Israelites in the Exodus are one. Or Ruth and Naomi when they have to leave Moab because of famine and they have no social standing there. You could call them economic and environmental refugees. Or Elijah the prophet who has to run from King Ahab and Jezebel because they want to kill him. Or the people of Judah who were taken into exile after the fall of Babylon. Or one of the writers for today, Jeremiah, who very much was a prophet in Judah during that time, and at the end of his life he had to flee. He had to become a refugee in Egypt because of the fall of Jerusalem. Or John of Patmos, the writer of the book of Revelation. He was in exile because of his beliefs, lost everything he had. And so he was rendered a landless person in exile on an island. And then perhaps most notable of all the refugees would have to be the son of Mary and Joseph. Jesus himself was a refugee. After the events in Bethlehem and his birth, they had to flee to Egypt. And so for a number of years there, lived as landless people far away from their home. Psalm 137, there's a phrase that says, "How can we sing the Lord's song in a strange land?" Or Psalm 67, "I have become a stranger to my own kindred." Dr. Rolf Jacobson, in that study conference I was at the other week, spoke on Psalm 39, which says, "Hear my prayer, O Lord, and give ear to my cry, and do not hold your peace to my tears. For I am your passing guest, an alien like all my ancestors." And Dr. Jacobson explained that the term alien very much means a person without a home, without a community, basically someone who is landless, someone who is a refugee. And what that person needs is someone to take them in, a group, a family, an individual, to be hospitable, to be a patron, to speak for them, to provide shelter, to give them a new start. So in other words, being a refugee is not new. And the people of God throughout history, many times themselves, suffered from being refugees. And that's very much a part of their story, a part of Jewish people, and it is then also part of our story as well. And also in the Bible, and there are many verses and references to welcoming them. In Leviticus, it says, "Care for the refugee as you would for your family and yourself." Or in Ezekiel, where it says, "The aliens who reside among you shall be to you as citizens." Or in Romans 12, it says, "Extend hospitality to strangers," and so on. And I think you need to know, and probably someone who know me well, know that this issue connects very strongly with me. My mother and father arrived here in 1948 as sponsored immigrants. And they arrived here not so much because they wanted to leave their homeland for new adventure and new lands, but because they had lost all that they had. They lost their farmland in the Ukraine through communist collectivization in the 1920s and 30s, and they also lost family members through purges and forced starvation in that time. In the Second World War, they were relocated by the German government to live in Western Poland, and then they lost most of their remaining possessions and connection to family when they fled westward as the Soviet Red Army advanced on Berlin and on Germany. And among the things that allowed them to finally reach Canada was the willingness of others, both in Europe and here, to take them in, to provide them shelter, some of it because of government policy, some of it because of the generosity of strangers, to give them a resting place, a safe haven, to sponsor them, and to allow them to move to a place where they could find a home and a shelter and a place to have a family. And that includes work of Canadian Lutheran World Relief and the Red Cross. And one of the things that kept them going in their darkest moments, and when they were even separated from each other and totally at their wits' end, was their faith in God. That God was still with them, and that God would guide them and lead them regardless of what happens. Now, I'm not sure what you think of that, Sherry, but I think that many families also have that story somewhere in their history. For some of you, it may be how your families arrived in Canada or your ancestors. For others, it may be further in the distant past, but I'm sure that if most of you study your family history, somewhere along the way, if you can go back far enough, you'll find at a certain point they would have to move. They would be forced to move, whether it was because of persecution, discrimination, war, economic factors, social issues, whatever. That they were landless and homeless, and that without the willingness of someone to take them in and provide them a place to settle and land and build a home, their lives probably would have been lost. Which means that we would not be here. So what I'm trying to share here is that this is very much a biblical story, and that this is very much our story, this matter of refugees. It's not just the out there, over there, foreigners kind of issue. It is our story as well. And I think it's important for us to recognize that. And that brings me to the good news. One of the issues we face in Canada is this ongoing perception that these new people will come here and will suck up all our resources and all our jobs and will deprive us. And the good news is that's simply not so. That does not occur. CLWR has a little on its website, a little myth, fact kind of question and answer piece, and it says, myth, refugees are charity cases. Fact, refugees are hardworking people who have overcome incredible hardship. Most refugees find work when they arrive in Canada, pay taxes, contribute to the economy as consumers, and they are strong people who have overcome incredible hardships. And when I read that, I say, yeah, that certainly was true for my parents. That certainly was true for many of their relatives who also arrived here. And that's certainly true, perhaps, of many of our families as well. In other words, we do benefit when we provide shelter and homes for these people. These stories of people coming and settling and actually making a difference and contributing to the fabric and structure and economy and lives of our nation, they abound everywhere. I have a couple of books up on the pulpit. I have them in my office. One's called Lucky Ones, another one's called We Did It. And both of these share many different personal stories of people from all over the globe who have been come here often as refugees, who have had to take refuge elsewhere and then come here, and now how they are active and contribute in this land. It's quite inspiring to read. So, quite simply, we need not fear. That is good news. And the other piece of good news is one that I shared in the beginning, is that this issue should not overwhelm us. And I know it can be, because it was announced the other day that there are now more refugees in the world than at any time since the Second World War. And that is staggering, that is frightening. But that should not overwhelm us or paralyze us. Because first of all, our faith shows us that God is with the stranger, the refugee, the alien, our ancestors of the Bible and our family history. And because of that, we as people of God can be moved to be hospitable, to be supportive, to be a welcoming people. God calls on us to remember and pray for those who suffer in this way. God calls and empowers us to be active sponsors, to be welcoming, to be hospitable, to engage in prodding and pushing governments throughout the world to put an end to this kind of activity, whatever it might be, that would lead people to have to lose their homes and have to suffer in such ways. The good news is that as large as that may seem, that is all possible when we are gathered together by God's grace, when we are inspired and motivated to know how God really makes a difference in our lives and moves us to make a difference in the lives of others. Let us pray. Mighty Lord, as you guided the Israelites through the wilderness,
be a pillar of fire by night and a pillar of cloud by day for refugees in search of new hope and new life.
as you brought the Israelites out of bondage to freedom,
Bring refugees out of persecution to safety.
as you protected the Israelites through 40 years in the desert,
Protect those who languish for years in refugee camps.
wipe away their tears of sorrow,
Let their mourning be made way to joyous hope.
put an end to warfare and tyranny,
Let some may return home without fear of violence.
open the doors of safer nations,
Let some may find new homes in new lands.
rebuild their lives,
That they might enjoy the fruits of labors in peace.
restore their material goods,
That they might sustain their families in prosperity.
revive their hope,
That they might face a future with promise.
shine your grace upon them,
That they might know your love.
strengthen their bonds of friendship and family,
That they might serve one another with encouraging love.
and inspire your churches to welcome the stranger.
That together we might build communities of hope